Hello YouTube, here we are again. Calgary has had a very interesting year so far, and I'm going to go over the August report that was just released this morning. If you want to read the full report on your own, please click the link in the description. All of the information provided in today's video is from the Calgary Real Estate Board, so let's go. Hi, my name's Adam Fyfe, and I'm your local Calgary realtor. If you're going to give me a few minutes of your day, you're going to get something out of it. If you're planning to make a move, or if you just have some questions about the market here, please make sure to click the link in the description and book a call with me, and I can answer all the questions that you might have. All right, so I'm going to read this description in its entirety. If you'd rather read it on your own, that's fine. I don't always enjoy listening to myself read either. Pause the video, scroll along the timeline to the next chapter. Market starts to shift as sales slow. City of Calgary, August 2nd, 2022. Significant slowdowns in the detached and semi-detached market were nearly offset by sales growth in the apartment and row sectors. This left July sales 3% lower than levels recorded last year. While this is the second month where sales activity has slowed, total residential sales this month are still amongst the strongest levels recorded in our market. Rising lending rates are causing shifts within the market, and as a result, new listings for higher priced product are on the rise relative to sales activity. Meanwhile, there continues to be a lack of supply for lower priced detached and semi-detached product. This is driving consumers who are looking for affordable homes to purchase apartment or row style properties. Residential new listings in the city declined compared to what was seen in 2021. But when considering the dynamics between price ranges, we are seeing a different trend play out. Listings for homes priced below $500,000 fell by 18%, while levels rose by 20% for homes priced above $500,000. This has left conditions to remain relatively tight in the lower end of the market, while conditions are starting to shift towards more balanced levels in the upper end of the market. When considering the relationship between the supply and demand, the months of supply has continued to trend up from the exponentially tight conditions seen earlier in the year. However, with just over 2 months of supply, the market remains far tighter than anything experienced throughout the recessionary period experienced prior to the pandemic. As expected, the benchmark price did see some slippage relative to the level seen earlier in the year, and rising lending rates have cooled much of the bidding war activity that was driving significant gains earlier in the year. However, prices currently remain over 12% higher than last year's levels, still outpacing forecasted price growth for the year. As we move forward, we do anticipate further rate gains will weigh on housing activity and prices, but not enough to completely offset the exponentially strong gains recorded over the first half of the year. All right, so let's start this thing off like usual by looking at the total residential sales and inventory for all of Calgary. Now, these graphs include all property types across the whole city. These graphs are useful when looking back at previous years trying to figure out where we stand historically, but I'm more interested in what's happened over the past few months, as this has been a pretty wild year. But before we do that, there are a couple cool things here. You can see that sales have slowed down to levels seen in 2009, 13, and 14, where inventory is also near levels from 2009, 13, and 14. Interesting. All right, so at first glance, this chart can be a lot to digest. Now let's keep in mind that this is total residential, so all property types in all areas of Calgary. This is really good information to know when looking at the macro level trying to figure out the total health of Calgary. But breaking it down into a micro level is a must for your personal situation. Now, this is just a quick snapshot of every month's stats from January to August, both this year and last year. And first we can see that the month of July is the second month in a row to see a decline in the benchmark price. We're now hovering around that March-April price point for total residential. Remember, every single property type will have a slightly different story, and I'll go over that in a moment. So you can see that the overall sales have declined, and new listings have fallen by almost 900 from last month as well, and thank God for that. If we had a lot of new listings stay elevated, and inventory also stayed elevated while sales were declining, we would see an even steeper price decline. And lastly, you can actually see that the average sold price point is the lowest it's been all year, which is under $500,000, which goes in line with what was talked about in the written description as I read earlier. And that's pretty cool. Okay, so month over month, comparing this month to last, the detached market saw a decrease in sales, a decrease in new listings, an increase for days on the market, and a decrease in the benchmark price by about $4,000. Next, the apartment sector saw a decrease in sales, an increase for days on market, but an increase in the benchmark price by about $1,400. Next, the semi-detached market saw a decrease in sales, an increase for days on market, and a decrease in the benchmark price by about $5,000. And finally, the townhouse sector, they saw a decrease in sales, an increase for days on market, and a decrease in the benchmark price by about $1,000. Now remember, that's just month over month. So with that being said, you can see that rising interest rates work, and they can quickly shift our market as a whole. You should look into Vancouver and Toronto monthly numbers. Now, those are wild, and maybe I'll do a market comparison one day or another. So moving forward, this graph will help us break down which property types in each quadrant are currently in demand. Now, this will help shine a light on which quadrants are hot and which ones are getting hit the most. Now remember, you still need to break it down even further into individual communities for your personal situation. On average, over a quick glance, you can see that most property types are around 2 months of supply, which was up by 0.5 from last month. Now, each color represents each quadrant, where the black bar is the total residential average for that property type. Now, overall, months of supply has increased in every property type in every quadrant. That means that it is now taking longer to sell homes, which means buyers are slowly starting to take back their negotiation power. Right now, it is looking like townhomes and detached homes in the southeast are in the most demand, whereas city center is getting rocked pretty hard with the most amount of inventory. Apartments in the northeast and east will most likely see some pretty decent decline in prices as well. 3 months of supply is considered to be a balanced market where prices shouldn't really shift too much in one way or another. So keep that in mind. So moving right along, this is a fairly informative map of the 8 sections of Calgary. If you're curious about price points in the different areas of town, here you go. Now, I've taken the time and virtually toured each quadrant of Calgary via Google Maps. It was my first attempt at trying something like this, so try not to pick it apart too much. I do plan on redoing that series later this year, as I've learned a lot about this whole YouTube thing. Now, as you can see, the year-over-year price points are still pretty high, especially in the north and the northeast quadrant. Looking back at the past few months, you can see a slowdown happening, but year-over-year, we are still seeing some double-digit price growth. So here's another snapshot of total residential prices when compared to July of last year. Now, as everyone knows, prices are up. If you're looking for a home in 2022, this information can be useful, but diving into the area of town and the property type will provide you with the most amount of confidence and help create that home buying or home selling strategy. Make sure to talk to someone who understands that, and they'll actually take the time to explain things to you. Even though prices are up from last year, are you looking to jump into the market in 30 days or 120 days? Because that could make a really big difference on how you actually approach these stats. You can see that the blue arrows are starting to see a little bit of a flat line in prices. Now, how much are we going to see them correct over the next 6 to 12 months? Now, like usual, I'm not going to read this out, but if you are interested in a certain property type, you can pause the video here and read what the Calgary Real Estate Board has to say about each. It's important to get all the data before making any large real estate decision. Both buyers and sellers should utilize this data to their advantage, because at the end of the day, it really is the key to their success, especially in a market like this. Are you a buyer who wants to hold off for the best possible deal, or are you a seller who may want to jump into the market and capitalize on these higher price points? I cannot make any predictions, but book a consultation if you're curious about what may be the best solution for you and your personal situation. My calendar link is below. Finally, the microeconomic outlook for each property type in each quadrant. Now, this information is very useful when helping clients develop a better understanding of local activity. Now, this coupled with a real-time comparative market analysis, or a CMA, is by far the most important thing that you can do when considering a purchase or even putting your home up for sale. The strategies consistently shift and change every single month. Find a professional who's willing to take the time, break down the numbers, and work with you on your behalf. You see, these numbers can be used in many different ways. Calgary Real Estate is still going to be somewhat competitive this year. Set up a plan well in advance, because it's still very much important regardless of the current conditions. Take the time, do the research, and trust your advisors. I've uploaded both my seller's and buyer's guide video for 2022, so feel free to check those out, as you may learn a thing or two. If you have any questions, feel free to text me or simply book a time in my calendar below. I hope you got some value from this video. Please like it and browse my channel for other related content. So until next time, peace.